Never knew that my heart would feel this way towards you. Empty bed, empty dining room tables where we used to eat dinner, empty songs that I once dedicated to you. You were my best friend, more than just a lover. I lost you, and there is no treasure. Growing up in church was an amazing experience. I grew up in going to church in South Florida. And then when I went away for school, I went to a church in Gainesville because I went to the University of Florida. And so there was a lot of differences in the church settings. So in South Florida, I was just used to kind of going to church on Sundays, was involved with a lot of like praise dancing. We did a lot of different things with the youth. And then coming into college, my faith journey, I saw people actually going to church on Sundays, but also, applying biblical principles into their daily lives. So it was different, but, I enjoyed it. And so I continued going to church on my own. So I was really, really thankful for that because that kept me out of a lot of trouble that I could have gotten into in college because, UF was definitely a party school. So it kept me out of those kind of things. And when I went to college, I also joined an organization there. And so being a part of that organization kept me grounded. We had a lot of different activities during the week. And then we also would go to church on Sundays together. A huge challenge that I faced in my faith walk was going through a divorce. I was married to my high school sweetheart. We stayed together throughout high school. And then also when I went to college, it was really hard because I went away for school and he stayed back home. And so it was really hard in our relationship, but we continued to be together. And after 4 years of being together in college, he proposed on the day of my graduation. And that was amazing to me because I saw in college a lot of young people getting married. So I thought, okay, this is the way to go, and we had been together for so long, so we wanted to get married. So after a year of being engaged, then we got married on the beach, and it was a beautiful wedding. We had a beautiful relationship. And I felt like because we both knew the Lord and we both were going to church and that, we were both on the same page with the Lord, that we would continue, to be in love and to work out any issues that we had to work out in our marriage. And even before marriage, I would go around asking married couples about like, how did you guys stay together? Because I know the wedding is one thing, but being able to go through marriage day to day and last together, I knew that would be something else. So we went to premarital counseling. We would talk to other couples. So I really thought, hey, we are going to do things differently than other people that we've seen that has gone through divorces. And so, we got married. And our first year of marriage was really, we had a lot of challenges, like normal things that people go through, financial difficulties. We were both still learning one another. And so in those challenges, I was like, maybe we should get counseling. Maybe we should do this or do that. And so where I would want to seek counseling, he didn't. And so eventually what I think happened is that he would tell our problems to people at work. And so he eventually got into an adulterous relationship, and that really broke my heart. I couldn't believe that I was going through this, that this was my reality. And so, one day I came home from work and all of his stuff was gone. And I was like, what is going on? So I would call him, he wouldn't answer. I eventually went to his job, but he didn't really want to talk about it. He didn't want to talk about like where he was going. And so during that time, I felt very lost, and I couldn't believe that this is what's happening to me. And so I went on the internet and I was like, I can't be the only one who is facing this type of challenge. So I went on the internet. I was like, who else has experienced their spouse leaving them? So as I looked more and researched, I saw that there was a Christian group where spouses were standing for for their loved ones. They believe that, the enemy has gotten their spouse, and now through prayer and through just waiting, that their spouse would come back. So in being a part of that group kind of helped me to see like, hey, if I just continue with the Lord, if I continue to pray, he will come back home. And so after a few months, I prayed, and then he eventually came back home. I remember specifically one time just driving to work, and I was like, Lord, would you have him contact me today? Because he had me blocked everywhere. We weren't talking. I would sometimes, try to send messages, I'm praying for you. And he would like tell me, stop texting me. And then, he eventually just blocked me. So one day in the morning, I was praying. I was like, Lord, would you have him contact me? And later that night, he actually contacted a friend, saying he doesn't know how to come home, but he wants to come home. And so after that, he contacted me. We met in this parking lot, and we kind of talked about what he was facing. And he was living with another woman. They had gotten into trouble to the point where guns were pulled on them from the police. And it was a lot of chaos, opposite of our home and the things that we were, facing in our marriage. And so he came home, and I thought, hey, this is our restoration story. This is something that we can testify to other people that, we faced this difficulty in our marriage, but, now we are going to do better. So, he even spoke at the standing group that I was a part of. He spoke there, gave encouragement to other people, who were praying for their spouses to come home. And I really thought like, hey, this is it. We faced this challenge, but now we're going to rebuild together. Things are going to be different. So, I trusted him. I trusted his words, to the point where we were looking for homes together, planning a future together. And so, eventually I got pregnant, we had a child, and during my pregnancy, just seeing his behaviors, it seemed like he had reverted backwards. And so I was like just checking things. And the more I checked, the more I realized he was seeing someone else from his job again. And that was truly devastating, especially because now I am pregnant, And so eventually I had my child, going through, having a child for the first time. So going through that postpartum depression, going through, hey, my husband is wanting to leave again, and that was very, very difficult for me in that time. He eventually left again, and I was heartbroken all over again, a lot of emotions, but this time with an added responsibility of my son. So I was going through a lot, and I honestly didn't really know what to do. Oftentimes I felt like the Lord had left me. I felt like no one could take this pain away from me. And I remember one day I went to the bank with my son, and while I was there was, a banker, a man who was there, and I was attracted to him. And I was like doing everything that I could to get his attention, because now I'm feeling very vulnerable. I'm feeling very desperate. And so he didn't pay me any attention. And so I went back home, and I was with my son. And while walking into our home, there was a man there that I had never seen before. And he was like, "Your son is so beautiful." And I was like, "Thank you." And he was like, "His mother is too." So I'm like, oh, okay. So now I'm getting attention where my husband's gone, and I'm getting attention from this man who is very different than my husband, like, more muscular, very tall. And he like followed me into my apartment, and I let him, because I'm just not thinking. I'm just thinking about this attention that I'm getting. He's like, I'm here like as a construction worker on the property. I don't want anyone to see me, but I want to let you know that I will take care of you. I'll take care of you and your son. I'll provide for you guys. And he's like this Puerto Rican man. And I'm like, I guess I was just like, is this really happening? But I let it happen. And, he gave me his number. He's like, just call me, whatever. So after he left is when I was like, I know this is stupid. I know this is like crazy. This is clearly like love bombing. This guy doesn't know me, and he's telling me that he loves me and I'm the most amazing woman ever. And I'm like, isn't this like the enemy? But even though I knew it I still enjoyed feeling that attention. And I was already feeling like low self-esteem. Like, why would my husband leave me? So I entertained it for a couple hours, and then I got back to myself and I was like, okay, I need to cut this off. Whatever this is, like, this is not feeding my spirit. This is very fleshly. And also, like, I could get myself into a lot of trouble. So I eventually told him, hey, nah, we cannot hang out. Like, this is not what I want to do, And so basically I continued taking care of my son, and my ex-husband, he would pay half the rent still, even though he was away from the home. And so that's how I kept going. And eventually I would pray for him to come back home, and he would come back home. And this began a cycle. He would leave while I was at work, and I would come back home, see his stuff missing, and then I would pray for him, and eventually a few months later, he would return. And, it got to the point where he was telling me things like, oh, this is not an affair. I stopped loving you, so this is why I'm doing this, as if like, he was saying that he has a reason to do this. And I'm like, no, I make mistakes, you make mistakes, we make mistakes in marriages, but this is not how we go about it. I eventually went to counseling, and my counselor helped me to just put some things into perspective. She encouraged me and she supported me, and eventually things got really, really tough. He would come back, he would say he wanted his family, but he wasn't willing to put the work in. And as I began to look at my son, I was like, do I want my son to grow up thinking that this is normal? And no, I didn't. So having my son and looking at my life gave me the strength to say, hey, if you are not going to do better, then you have to leave. So this time it was my choice. And I told him, to go live back home with his mom. And he did. And, that gave me the strength to continue to move forward. So he went back home with his mom, but then he didn't stay there for too long. He eventually went back to the lady. And, it was really, really tough for me because we lived in an area where everything reminded me of our marriage. Certain songs, certain scents, different activities reminded me of our marriage. And so eventually I decided to move away a couple hours from home with my son. We lived with some college friends who, they took us in and they were like, hey, you don't have to pay us. We just want to be here for you. And that was really, really nice. That was such a beautiful moment. I thought about just how faithful the Lord is, to have people that would take us in, and want to support me in this time. So I gather up some stuff and we moved. My family came with us and we moved away. And, while I was there, I found a new job and my friend babysat for me. And that was truly, truly helpful in that difficult time. I remember even just going to the new job, and sometimes we would have meetings with parents because I worked in a school. And I remember one specific meeting where the parent said, my last name is going to be changing soon because of divorce. And that triggered me. Like, I got up out of that meeting, I went to the bathroom and I just cried. And I was like, Lord, this is so crazy. Like, it was like, I was like, okay, this is a prank. This is all a prank. Like back in the days, MTV had this prank show where people would get set up and it was like all a joke. It was a hoax. So I was like, this clearly is a prank. I'm ready to come back to reality. I'm ready to go back to when we were in love and, we were a family. But obviously that is not what was happening. And I kept feeling like the rug was being pulled under me. Anytime I had a moment of strength or a good time, I felt like there was more news of what my ex was doing. And here I am having to deal with all these different emotions all together. Eventually, I spoke to him and I was like, hey, if you go through with a divorce, like there's no us coming back together. And I even offered like counseling for one last time. And during the time that we were away, I would have to drive maybe like an hour once a month so that he could see my son. That was our agreement. Anyhow, he eventually filed for divorce, and I was never served because they didn't really know where to find me, which I feel like was a blessing because I don't know how I would have acted if I saw a sheriff coming up to me giving me divorce papers. Like I would have been more of a mess. Anyhow, I called the courts to get the paperwork sent to me. And in the paperwork, I saw what it said. And so eventually we went for a mediation. And at that mediation, I was just praying to the Lord for peace. Like the word talks about the Lord giving us peace that surpasses all understanding. And to me, that means that peace in the most chaotic situations. And so I was really praying for peace during the mediation. And I remember just arriving there and my mom came with me and I was in that room with him. And it was just very odd. You are literally like sitting across from the person that you were just sleeping together with, the person that you were in love with, the person that you trusted with your most like delicate secrets, you know? And it was just very odd. We had to make plans for our child. We had to make plans being divorced. And so after the mediation, we agreed on different terms. And then a few months later, we went through the court hearing of the final divorce proceeding. And it was just really, really crazy. I remember arriving to the courthouse by myself and I saw my ex-husband at the desk and he wanted to know where the room was. And it was just so crazy walking together in this elevator going up to get a divorce. So, throughout this whole process, even though I was angry and I was very hurt and filled with pain, I still had this sense of peace that kept me together, honestly. And so after the divorce, he gave me a handshake and I was like, this is not normal. This is so odd, And in the times where I wanted to be revengeful, I just felt it in my soul, in my mind, like that's not the way to go. I wanted to do things to the other woman. I wanted to do things to him, but I always was held back. I just felt like this ain't no Lifetime movie, Raquel. Like, don't do that, So I had a lot of resolve. And I was just left in a very desperate position because I really loved marriage and my worst nightmare was becoming a single mom. So the fact that that is what happened, I didn't know what to do with my life. Here I am, single mother, living with my friends, and I wanted to be in a relationship, and so I remember I started talking to this guy that was from high school. And I was like, yeah, you're going to be my husband now. Like my ex-husband left me. I'm divorced, but now you are the next guy. So eventually, we moved away from the town that we were living in and I came back home and I was living with my mom. And then I was quote unquote dating this new guy that was supposedly supposed to be my new husband now. But that relationship turned out to not be great. Like he ended up being a liar. And I was like, this is really, really crazy. And after that relationship, I felt like the Lord was leading me to be single. And I said, okay, Lord, single for a year. I was really desperate for another relationship, but I felt like I'm so hurt. I'm going through so many transitions in my life. I need to slow it down and really dedicate time to just being with the Lord, being a mother to my son, and really trying to get to a place where I have a new identity now and I can just be better, in life. So during my year of being intentionally single, I did a lot with just participating in the church, serving at the church, serving at different conferences. I would spend a lot of time with the Lord, meditating on his word, going home. I remember one time after school, I remember I just cried after work because I was working at a school at that time. And I remember thinking about the story of the woman with the issue of blood for 12 years in the Bible. And I remember she felt like if I could just touch the hem of his robe, I could be healed. And I remember just going home one day and just like laying on the ground, putting my hands out and being like, Lord, I am touching the hem of your robe because I want to be healed. I want to get better from this. So I did a lot of reading in the Bible. I did a lot of like just reading about how did people get through challenges in the Bible? You know, what did they do to keep going? And one of the themes that I felt like I was hearing was just like hope, hope and trusting in the Lord, even when you are not seeing things go the way that you want it to go. So it was a lot of me like trusting in the Bible, reading his word, going through a lot of church events. I filled up that year with a lot of church events, any women empowerment type of events, anything that was helping me, I would go. I would even go to a lot of events where there were prophecies. And now I look back, I'm like, this was not a good reason to go to places that had prophecies, but I was going because I wanted them to say, you are going to get back with your ex-husband. I was looking for a word like that. I was looking for anyone to tell me, what was he doing? I was not going to these places for the right reasons. I just wanted someone to say, yeah, your marriage is going to be restored. You're going to be able to have more babies with your ex-husband. Things are going to go well. But that is not what happened. So, during that year, it was a lot of just like me, like fasting and praying, me going to a lot of church services, me writing, and me like writing about the anger that I felt, me writing about just things that I wish I could tell him, a lot of letters to my ex-husband that I felt like I couldn't share. So that time was really, really a sweet time that I cherished with the Lord because it was really like, it was just me and him. It was me and him against the world because I felt like no one really knew what I was experiencing. And I also felt like I didn't want to be like the bearer of bad news. I didn't want to be the person in the crowd that puts people down. So a lot of times I would not even show people the pain that I was experiencing, the things that I was going through, because I didn't want to ruin it for them. So during that time, it was a lot of me. It was just me and the Lord and me being like, Lord, I do not like this. I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but I am trusting you. I'm looking to you. I would spend time on the beach because that was a place of peace for me. And I would just cry out till I cried until I couldn't cry anymore. I remember one time I went to the beach and I couldn't go on the physical beach because it was raining. And I just spent time in my car. And as the rain poured down on my car, so did the tears, So I cried out to the Lord a lot during that time. And he was there. He was with me. After that year of intentionally being single with the Lord, I sought out, going to dating sites because I believe that in my marriage, I idolized marriage a lot, and so coming out of it, I wanted to be in a relationship because there goes another idol of wanting to be with men. So the idling of men and being in a relationship definitely, I feel like stems from my father not being in the picture. He was more like a phone call away, not physically there in my life when I was growing up. And so I remember writing a poem, even in elementary school, no one to call dad, because I never called anyone dad. And so I feel like having that father wound definitely left a hole and emptiness within me. And also just seeing women in my family have men, whether the men were good or bad, they always had a man. So I always felt like, hey, in order to make it in life, you need to have a man. So that is definitely where the idolizing of men came from. And I felt like, how do you make it without a man? I remember I would see women buying houses and doing these other things without men. And I'm like, it was crazy to me. I'm like, how did you do that? And it was truly, it was bad, that idolization and that desperation to be with a man. It was crazy. And so I went on dating websites, and it was just a crazy experience, talking to different men who only wanted one thing. These men weren't really Christian like they said they were professed to be. And it was a really crazy experience. So I didn't really get into a lot of relationships. It was just a lot of like talking to different people and just hating the position that I was in. And during this time, I was also co-parenting with my ex-husband. And so he would have my son every other weekend, and our co-parenting relationship went up and down. There were good times and then there were bad times, but I truly believed in pursuing peace because I'm like, I want him to be in my son's life. And so I want to do things in a way that he is able to be in his life and he's able to be a father to him. And so as time passed, going on dating sites sometimes and sometimes not going on, but then just realizing like, Lord, who am I in you? Who am I in your eyes? Who do you want me to be? Because I was very much a futuristic person when I was married, and I was like, had the rest of our lives planned out. And now it just kind of seemed like, what am I going to do? And so I got to a point where I was like, Lord, you created me, to do what you've called me to do. So what is that? So in finding my purpose in the Lord and in finding my identity in the Lord, I got to a place where I felt more confident. I felt more stronger. And I was more comfortable in going to work and being a single mom and eventually getting my own place with my son and just living life with that new identity, and it finally coming to a place of acceptance. Because I believe that in going through divorce, you go through like those stages of grieving, when you're going through denial. And then eventually, you're going through a place where you can accept that this is what happened to you and you can move forward. So eventually, it's just me and my son and we're living life and things are better. And so because I felt a lot better, I was given the opportunity to write a book, and I chose to write a book about my story of divorce because often I felt like even though other people were going through divorce just like I was, we were handling things a lot differently. Where they wanted to be or stay in a place of bitterness, I was trying to do everything to not be that bitter type of woman. I knew that I did not want this moment in my life to destroy the rest of my life. And so I felt like, let me write my story to be able to encourage other people going through the same thing, to let them know that, listen, the Lord is on your side. The Lord is with you. The Lord was with me through it all. Like, I remember there were times where I was like, Lord, I prayed for this man. Like, why did you let this happen? There were times I never felt like the Lord was not there, but I felt like maybe he was not listening to me anymore. Maybe like whatever blessings I get, it's going to turn badly. I believed in a lot of those types of lies, but I know that the Lord, he just planned things out differently than I would have, but he worked it out for me in my favor. He truly turned those ashes into beauty. And, a lot of people will say the scripture, the Lord gives you your heart's desires. But then we got to read the other part too, that says it's according to his will, So there are things that happen in my life where I'm like, I look back and I'm like, wow, Lord, this was you. This is not how I would have wanted to do it, but this is totally you. So, just going back to becoming an author, I had the chance to share my book, and that helped me, to feel like there was a part of that chapter that was really, really closed because I was able to share my story and just share how I felt. And, in going through the divorce, some things that really helped me was writing. writing really helped me, writing poetry and just being able to get things out that I always felt in my mind and I couldn't really tell him, I couldn't really tell other people. So writing really, really was just it gave me a sense of relief that really, really helped me. And I would like to share one of the poems that I wrote during that time. So this poem is called The Wedding Ring. There used to be a ring on my finger. I used to smile every time I saw your face. But now I'm just filled with hate and disgrace. The very thought of you makes me want to vomit on the inside. Oh, how I tried to avoid this route, but I was dying on the inside. The moment we said I do, I thought I had you all to myself, but that was a fail. I never felt so much in my existence. I never knew you could be stabbed in the heart by the person who claimed to care about you. I never knew that the love you lost could be forever. I never knew that my heart would feel this way towards you. Empty bed, empty dining room tables where we used to eat dinner, empty songs that I once dedicated to you. You were my best friend, more than just a lover. I lost you, and there is no treasure. And so, after becoming an author, I just had a lot of dreams, and I was thankful for the Lord to go back to a place where I could dream. And I had the opportunity to also join a pageantry system, so Miss Plus America. And that kind of helped me remember just, Raquel, you're still beautiful. Even though this happened, your ex-husband chose someone over you, you are still beautiful. So in entering the pageantry system, it was never something that I dreamt of, but it was just an opportunity that was given to me. And I said yes. And I was just very, very thankful because it just taught me more about being a woman, more about being a leader, stepping out of my comfort zone and, just doing things that I never thought that I could do. And so it was truly an amazing experience and helped me to really hone in on my new identity and becoming just a woman who values herself again, because I had lost a lot of value in going through that divorce. And it was also good for my son to see like his mom is, doing something different, doing something, that was just a wonderful experience. And so I had eventually gotten to a point where I didn't feel desperate for a man, desperate for a relationship. And I really took some time to just like slow down and really think about the things that I value in my life. And during that time, or after that time, I got back on the dating apps and I met, my boyfriend that I have now. And in just being in a new relationship, a committed relationship, a lot of those triggers from my marriage definitely came back up. But I'm thankful for the way that I've grown over the years and past the divorce and being able to be in a healthier relationship with someone who is following the Lord and someone who knows what it is to value a woman and to be able to be there for her and be able to accept her for who she is and want the best for her. And so in just having this new identity, I'm just thankful that the Lord was with me every step of the way. And because I chose to continue to pursue my relationship with the Lord, read the Bible, fast, go to counseling, stay around other believers, it really helped me to move forward in becoming the woman that I am today. My advice for people in unhealthy relationships is to truly, truly find out who you are. Definitely pray and seek counseling for what to do, whether it's divorce, whether it's to stay. But even in staying, it doesn't mean you have to live with the person who is in this who is unhealthy to you, because I truly believe in mental health wellness and doing things in your life that will help you to be a better person, to be a stable person. So I believe in counseling. I believe in talking to other people and allowing the Lord to guide you into what decision to make.